twisted.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back for another episode of FBA TV. Here's what we got in store today for you guys. We're going to do a little bit of catching stuff again. We're going to go to the field, talk about some stretching, some different gloves that I prefer to use, especially with training aids and stuff like that. And I'll see you guys at the field. Here we go. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. Here we are. We're back at the field. Glorious field, field of dreams as we call it in some cases. Today we're going to go over a little bit of catching stuff in regards to routine when you get to a field, some stretching habits that I like to teach kids, and also going along with some things that are very important with creating a routine for your repertoire. Alright, so I'll go ahead and put on the screen right here what we're going to be kind of talking about today from, like I said, stretching and the routine that we're going to have. The biggest thing that I used to like to tell kids when they get to a field is, how are you going to separate yourself from everybody else, right? When a scout or a recruiter shows up to the field, they can usually tell within the first 5-10 minutes of being in the field who's going to be the high caliber players and stuff like that. So every time I used to get to a field, I would go to the right field foul line, left field foul line, whichever, and I would run back and forth, do some pulls, kind of get my mind in a setting where I knew that I was going to have to go compete that day. And incorporate some stretches and some things like that we'll kind of go over a little bit later in the video. And the most common thing that you see whenever you get to a field is you kind of notice that all the guys kind of gather together and they're talking or whatever like that. If you go to a big league game or you go to college, even especially Power 5 bigger schools, you're going to notice that those guys who are actually looking to get drafted or going on to the next level are guys that separate themselves from the team, because if they're truly somebody that's going to be better, they're not going to be hanging out with other guys because those other guys aren't going with them to the next level. When you sign that NLI or that scholarship, or you're signing that multi-million-dollar contract with a professional organization, they're not sitting at that table with you. You're by yourself because you got yourself there. There might be coaches and everything that get you there too, but again, there's going to be certain things that you'll notice about players who are able to perform and able to do things different than other guys. It's not, yeah, talent's going to be involved with it, but at the same time, they're putting themselves in a situation where they're going to be successful because they've eliminated the outside environment. They've centered their thoughts and their thought process towards where they want to go. All right, so kind of the first thing we're going to talk about is a stretching habit. Okay, now we've already gotten our body loose. Our body has got blood circulating, temperature's up, because we've done the pre-thought. We've gone and run some pulls, did some stretching. So now we're ready to do a little bit of active stretching. So for the catchers, and especially when I do lessons or if I get a new catcher in the organization, this is something that I like to go over with them. It's kind of an active stretching routine that I learned and picked up in college. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is kind of initiate the muscle contraction of your hamstrings. So we're trying to fire those fast twitch fibers in your legs. We're not trying to slow your body down. We're already slow enough as a catcher as it is, but we got to find a way to speed ourselves up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be in my sign-giving stance, which we talked about in the last video. If you haven't seen it, I'll put a link right here so you can watch it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my right foot out, dig my heel into the ground to where I'm initiating that pull factor with my hamstring. Okay, so I'm going to pull and I'm going to explode out. And then so go for about 60 feet. All you're doing is trying to get those fast twitch fibers to fire, so that way that you can get your legs warmed up, okay? So then once I do my right leg, I'm gonna go back with my left leg. Have a good thing just kind of do the first pre-movement thing. Second thing we're gonna kind of do is kind of working on our secondary and hip mobility, okay? So I'm gonna be in my secondary stance, which we talked about in the last video. So I'm in my secondary stance. All I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out and then dig in with my heel and kind of use my groin, my hip muscles to kind of loosen up and to get stretched. And I'm gonna go for about 60 feet for that and come back so that way I get both sides of the pelvis. The next one, we're gonna be secondary again. This is gonna be more of an explosive movement. Okay, the next one we kind of loosened up the hip. Now we're gonna actually use our hip muscles to fire and explode. All right, so I'm gonna do my secondary stance. I'm gonna explode up and drop down, let my hips sink down so that way I'm getting an active stretch as I'm going, and then I'm gonna shoot up, and then let my hips come back down, go for about 60 feet or so, come back and do it again. All right, once you do that for a couple of times, okay, now you're gonna do what people usually call the duck walk. I think of it a little bit differently because when people think of the duck walk, they're just usually thinking about this right here. There's not really too much, the term we can use is circumduction of the hip joint. So when I want you to think about this, if this is my ball and socket joint of my hip, I've got to think about getting around the whole entire range of motion of my hips. That way I can create more durability, create more flexibility in my stance. So that way I can maneuver and move better. Okay, so what I want to think about is as one foot goes forward, my other hip is going to drop down, not drag on the ground, but it's going to drop down. It's going to roll, and kind of think about create as big of a circle with your knees as you can. So it's going to look something kind of like this. Trying to keep my chest forward, just so that way I'm creating good coordination, working on good habits, okay? Once I get down there, then I'm gonna do it backwards. This one is usually one that young kids have a hard time with because they don't have a lot of good body control. That's what a lot of these things are gonna create, is good body control for you, so that way you're able to get strong on your legs, create good coordination with your muscle-mind connection. All right, so when I go backwards, okay, I wanna really focus on my chest staying forward, keeping my center of mass kind of over my top of my legs. And this one, I'm just trying to open the gate and just kind of open that hip up. So now I'm going here, really keeping that hip forward, or the chest forward, I'm sorry. All right, do that for about 60 feet or so, and tell me how it goes. Comment down below what you think. All right, so next thing we're gonna kind of talk about is a little bit of, I guess, training aids or whatever they talk about. Honestly, if you look at great catchers like Johnny Bench, Yogi Berra, guys like that, there was no training aid, okay? So all this stuff that people come up with is kind of ridiculous, but for the sake of this video and because everybody thinks they need it, we're gonna talk about it and address it. All right, so obviously I got my regular glove. This was also another gift from college, a little training glove, all-star, little receiver glove. Obviously, they have another glove that has what's missing the pocket, so that way it really focuses on you catching in the right part of the glove. For me, I find this all that I needed and all that I use for lessons and stuff like that. And then my bare hands, because at the end of the day, I have to have a good feeling with my hands and the receiving the ball and all those different things, so that way I can be a better catcher, receiver, blocker, all those different things. So kind of going forward, some things that I like to do as far as receiving progressions and stuff like that. Okay, I'll usually start out barehanded with the guys, and we'll just do, working on receiving. Obviously, we'll do some reps right down middle, working on sway to the right, we're on sway to the left, and then we'll go some secondary stance. But I'll usually, for the most part, we'll be popping back and forth between sign giving and then into our secondary stance. That way we're creating good habits and we're not sitting in a long period of time in one position, because eventually, if you know anything about the human body, if you stare in a still position, you have to recreate that energy from somewhere. Instead, if I create a constant flow of motion, it's going to be easier for me to react to the ball. And then after we do something down the middle, we get comfortable, eyes get acclimated to what's going on in front of us. Now we're going to kind of open up here, okay? So I always say this one, okay, correlates to me to my arm side sway. Because whenever I go here, whether it's breaking ball from the right hand, changes from lefty to seeing that runs from the lefty, slider or whatever the case is. Okay, when I go to get the ball around here and I sway to go get it, okay, you're going to notice that the toe of your glove, which is over here, is going to have to wrap around the ball to have good control over it. If I let my glove go back here, a lot of the time it's going to hit and it's just going to go, and I'm going to be really pissed because I got to go find the ball, and my pitcher's pissed because he can't find the strike zone, and it's just going to create more problems. For the last one, so I kind of set them up on the other side. So this is going to correlate to the left hand, or my glove side part of the plate. So when I go, we go elbow inside the knee. We got glove in front of us. All we're working on is subtly bringing the ball back into the zone, just like we would if it was over here. That's how kind of it correlates to that side of the plate. because all I'm working on is if the ball's coming from this way, I'm just going to catch, receive, bring it back in, work on those small movements so that way I can create good habits. A big thing that you want to make sure that your kids are creating good habits. Another big thing that you want to make sure that your kids are doing, or your players or your athletes, whatever they are, make sure that their eyes are the only things that are moving. You do not want to create a habit of where every time I go to catch a ball, my head is moving the whole time. Because what happens is once my head starts moving, the world starts moving. And then once my head starts moving, well, the dude behind me are going to say, wow, this catcher's obviously moving his head, so it's obviously a ball. You might disagree. So you let them know how you feel. That is okay. But just keep it professional to the point where you're not showing them up in front of everybody. Okay, so the last thing I kind of want to close with is a little bit more, I guess, stretching, catching specific. These are things that I used to do, is things that I teach still that kids are kind of overlooked. Again, you want to make sure your hips, your knees, well, your knees you can't really stretch too much, but the muscles around it, your calves, your ankle mobility, you want to make sure that you're able to have good flexibility in your legs, because that's ultimately what's going to lead to you giving a good target, you being able to receive well, you being able to block and jump out of the squat to throw guys out. And going along with that, so the first thing we're going to talk about is kind of, again, there's no specific name for these because I don't really know what you would call them, but we're going to kind of go through them just that way you have an idea. Go ahead and try these at home. Let us know down below in the comments what you'd like about them. If there's things that you have more questions on, go ahead and drop below. Maybe we'll do a Q&A in the future with me and Coach Steffi and go from there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have kind of in a, I guess, a lunge position you can call it. I'm going to be in this stance here. I'm going to put my hand inside my foot, pushing against my elbow, so that way I'm creating hip abduction, pushing my knee out. Okay, and then from here I'm going to lift my leg up, and that way I'm really putting force, not force, but I'm stretching this outer hip here and also the inner groin. Okay, hold it for 10-15 seconds, and then do the other side. All right, so vice versa. I'm going to put my hand here, push the knee out, and then let that hip stretch. Okay. Then obviously if that gets too easy, try to go farther back with your back foot. All right, next thing we can do is one that's definitely overlooked by a lot of catchers is kind of stretching this outer muscles over here, okay? So I'm gonna put my foot like this, drop my knee down, and have my foot kind of in the back. And then if this is a stretch here, just hold this. Don't force anything. Make sure I'm controlling my breathing. As I stretch, I wanna make sure I'm having deep breaths. And then as I exhale, I want to go ahead and go into the stretch, okay? So again, 10-15 seconds, hold it, do it 3-4 times, okay? You do this throughout the course of a week. You do it twice, 3 times a week. You're going to notice it because your body's naturally going to stretch. It's going to elongate. It's going to be able to get more flexible. That's what we're trying to create. Again, back here, I'm also getting the front of this hip here, and then vice versa. Just go over here, do the same thing. Work on getting that outer hip, and then drop down into it. All right. Another thing we can do is stretch the calves. Okay. This is also another one that people don't really talk about. Okay. So I'm going to basically try to put my heel on the ground here, lift my other foot up, so that way I'm putting all that force through that big belly of the calf muscle, and hold it 10-15 seconds. Switch. Do the other side. Take a breath. Do whatever you need to do. Again. There's some other things you can do too, like as far as like the quad stretch or your hamstring stretch. Quad stretch being like this one, and then my hamstrings. Again, there's tons of stuff on the internet. This is just a few things that I wanted to give you guys that y'all can look at. You can add it to your notepad that you should be taking notes on every time you learn something from somebody, and add it to your game. And again, at the end of the day, all the work that you put in is going to benefit you, or it's going to show where you're at when your career is over. Did you put in the extra effort? Did you put in the time to stretch? Did you put in the time to run, hydrate, nutrition? All these different things add up, and that's what ultimately tells you your answers at the end of your career. Did I do what I needed to do? All right, YouTube, so that's all we got for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any more questions or anything specific you want us to talk about, whether it's fielding, pitching, outfield, strength and agility, stuff like that, go ahead and comment down below. Let us know what things that you want to see in the baseball world, things that aren't talked about, things that you want to talk about. Even if it's one person saying one thing that's able to get information out. That's the big thing that we think about in this organization, is trying to get information out to the players. We can't ever tell anybody what to do as far as what their futures entails, but we can give them the information in order for them to make the decision that is going to be best for their career. So kind of just to wrap some things up, right, remember, when you get to the field, separate yourself from everybody else. Go run, go stretch, go do whatever you can. Go single yourself out. Because at the end of the day, the people that are around you on your high school, your college teams, they're not going to the next place with you. Okay, you're going by yourself. So you might as well get used to being alone and creating good habits that way that you're standing out. All right, so again, go back and watch some of the middle part of this video. Go ahead and like see the different drills I do with the guys, the stretches and all those things. Even if you're doing a few of those things a couple of times a week, it's gonna help you because those are things that just ultimately give you more flexibility. Flexibility, there's strength. You want to be strong. You want to have good lower half. That's why catchers have the biggest tookuses on the field. And because we're always in a squat, and you know, everybody thinks that squat's the way to get a big butt. There you go. And then go ahead and check out some of the drills that I added into this. But if you like the video, go ahead and leave it a thumbs up. Go ahead and please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps us out greatly to grow the channel and kind of reach everybody around the world or the country, the US, Florida, wherever we want to go. That's where we're going to go. All right. See you guys next week. Woo!